And then all of a sudden it started like it sounded like gunfire, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden 3 big explosions.
It was if they had detonated.
Detonated.
If they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running.
For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
The widows from the police department and the fire department were standing at the new school in back for the 2 days, and they were screaming at the media, please pay attention. We got phone calls. We listened that their husbands or their children were saying there's explosives coming on like the 23rd, 26th floor before the buildings went down. And the media started laughing and said, we have no time to hear you.
What did we do? We made it outside. We made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, it started popping out.
It was if they had detonated.
Detonated.
If they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running.
Just ran up West
And then you just sort of this cloud of shit chasing you down.
Couldn't outrun it. West Street.
I couldn't outrun it.
So what'd you do?
I jumped behind a battalion car. I hit under the car. I was waiting to die.
As we were getting our gear on and making our way to the stairway, there was a heavy-duty explosion.
Trying to get some of the people out, but then there was those secondary explosions and then the subsequent collapses. So I don't know how many people were in there. I know there was a lot of firefighters, a lot of public safety personnel were in there.
The chief of safety of the fire department of New York City told me he received word of the possibility of a secondary device, that is another bomb going off. He tried to get his men out as quickly as he could, but he said that there was another explosion which took place. And according to his theory, he thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building.
The next thing we know, we had to get out of the building. We stuck on the stairs for a while. We finally got down to the lobby. Then we get to the lobby, it was this big explosion.
It just went ba-boom. It was like a bomb went off. And it was like holy hell coming down them stairs. And then when we finally got to the bottom, they were coming out on the mezzanine level there. And another explosion came right from it, because everything went flying. Right in front of you. Everything just went boom.
When we got to get out of here, we started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor.
Rick Sanchez has been there throughout this morning for us. Rick, tell us where you are and what the latest is.
Well, I'm in that area, if you're familiar with this area of where West Broadway and Hudson come together, right at Chambers. That would put us about a block and a half away from the site of where the explosion was. That area has just been evacuated because police have found what they describe as a suspicious device, and they fear that it might be something that could lead to another explosion. Obviously, there's a real sense of caution here on the part of police. I spoke with some police officials moments ago, Chris, and they told me that they have reason to believe that one of the explosions at the World Trade Center, aside from the ones that may have been caused by the impact of the plane with the building, may have been caused by a van that was parked in the building that may have had some type of explosive device in it. So their fear is that there may have been explosive device planted either in the building or in the adjacent area, and that's why they're being so cautious.
At 8:30, he says he was headed to level B4 in Tower 1, 4 stories below ground.
I go downstairs, the foreman tells me to go to remove the containers. As I'm walking by the main freight car of the building, in the corridor, that's when I got blown. I mean, the impact of the explosion, of whatever happened, it threw me to the floor, and that's when everything started happening. I know of people that got killed in the basement. I know of people that got broken legs in the basement. People that got reconstructive surgery because the walls hit them in the face. And I know I love seeing everybody every day that survived it and was there.
What happened was I was down in the basement. All of a sudden we heard a loud bang, and the elevator doors blew open. Some guy was burnt up, so I dragged him out. His skin was all hanging off. So I dragged him out and I pulled him out of the parking lot. This was what was left on him.
It was just total chaos, and the bottom of our building was blown out.
Let's let our audience know the information. Tell, what is it in your story that challenges the 9/11 events?
I worked in the building for 20 years. I was the person in charge of all the stairwells in the building. I have the only master key that opened all the doors in the building, and I went floor by floor opening the doors. On 9/11 and 8/46, I was at the basement of the North Tower, the first tower to be impacted, the second one to fall. While I was there, a second or two before the plane hit, there was a huge explosion on the sub-level B2 to sub-level B3.
So there was an explosion from below you?
Correct. And that was, a second or two before the
But it was clear and it was distinct that this explosion was before the plane hit the top of the building?
Definitely. As a matter of fact, it was so hard that I thought it was an electrical generator that just blew up on the sub-levels because the support of the building in terms of electrical pumps and generators was located by the mechanical room on that floor. And when I went to verbalize it, we heard the impact of the plane very far away coming from the top. So there was a big difference of something coming from the top and something coming from the basement. I mean, I worked there for 20 years. I could tell the difference of one thing coming from each side.
I was about 5 blocks away when I heard explosions, 3 thuds, and turned around to see the building we just got out of, antenna tip over and fall in on itself.
And then all of a sudden it started like it sounded like gunfire, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden 3 big explosions.
To reopen tomorrow.
Bellevue Hospital medical director, quote, "This is a catastrophe of unparalleled proportions," unquote. And the reason it is a result of what you're seeing on videotape. First one of the World Trade Center towers collapsed. Yes, collapsed. It looks like one of those scenes of an old building being, purposely dynamited and blown up.
We've heard reports of secondary explosions after the aircraft impacted, whether in fact there wasn't something else at the base of the towers that in fact were the coup de grace to bring them to the ground.
Can you tell us what has just happened?
Yes, Peter, it's Don Daly down here. I'm 4 blocks north of the World Trade Center. The second building that was hit by the plane has just completely collapsed. The entire building has just collapsed, as if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it pulled it down on itself, and it is not there anymore. That should be it. It has completely collapsed.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the... If you wish to bring anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
Again, what you're seeing are high shots. Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself.
Describe that.
Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
and we were in a building in which we were trapped for about 10, 15 minutes.
Are you talking about did you go immediately to the Office of Emergency Management?
I went down to the scene, and we set up headquarters at 75 Barclay Street, which was right there with the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the head of emergency management, and we were operating out of there when we were told that the World Trade Center was going to collapse. And it did collapse before we could actually get out of the building, so we were trapped in the building for 10, 15 minutes and finally found an exit and got out, walked north.
My next guest says that hijackers may not have brought down the towers by themselves. Here to explain his controversial theory, Stephen Jones. He's a professor of physics at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. Professor Jones, thanks for coming on.
Sure, thanks, Tucker.
Well, just sum up this, obviously, your theory, just the one sentence that I just explained in the intro, contradicts what we all think we know about how these towers collapsed. Quickly sum up your explanation for what happened.
Well, I'd like to start with this paper that you referred to. It's available online. What I'm doing, Tucker, is presenting evidence but it's a hypothesis to be tested. That's a big difference from a conclusion. And so I just wanted to clarify that. But to sum up, I've looked at the official reports by FEMA and so on regarding the collapse of these buildings.
Right.
I'd like to look at the collapse of Building 7 in just a minute. It was not even hit by a jet, so we should look at that one.
The two towers, the explanation has been that the fire inside was so intense that it weakened the structural steel and that each floor collapsed down upon the next in a pancake fashion and they imploded in on themselves. Is that essentially, I think, what people think?
Yeah, that's basically it, yeah. And so what I've done is to analyze these reports. But I would like to do a little experiment with you, Tucker, if I could. I sent out a video clip of the collapse of Building 7, because most people haven't actually seen that one, and that's the crux of the argument that I'm presenting.
Okay, sum up very quickly the argument for us. You believe there were explosives in the buildings planted by someone, detonated.
Well, yeah.
Is that correct?
In other words, the hypothesis to be tested is there's two hypotheses here. One is fire and damage caused all three buildings to collapse.
Okay.
The other is that explosives in the buildings may have caused the collapse. And so then we analyze and see which fits the data better, and I've done that in my 25-page paper.
I want to read you a quote from the Deseret Morning News, a paper in Utah from you. I'm quoting now. "It is quite plausible that explosives were pre-planted in all 3 buildings and set off after the 2 plane crashes, which were actually a diversion tactic. Muslims are probably not to blame for bringing down the World Trade Center buildings after all." That's, I would think, pretty offensive to a lot of people listening. Do you have any evidence for that? I mean,
well, not to the Muslims, I might say.
Well, that's a good.
I've had a lot of emails.
I'm sure your writings have been greeted with glee in Islamabad and Peshawar and places like that. But for Americans,
well, I haven't received any notes from there, but just good people. I have Muslim friends. Let me read, for example, but I'm not going to let you off the hook. I really want to do this experiment with you to look at the collapse of buildings. We don't have a lot of time for experiments, Professor, but if you could just give us one thing to hold on to. How you make these claims or appear to make these claims. Do you have any evidence that there were bombs in the building? Sure. Let's start with the collapse of Building 7. Can you roll the video clip that I sent to you?
Okay, I'm not sure if we can, but to specify, that is World Trade Center building number 7, smaller than the other 2, was not hit by a plane, of course, yet it collapsed.
Right, it's 47 stories.
That's right.
24 steel columns in the center.
Right.
Trusses asymmetrically supported. Now, I can't see what you're seeing, so
we just
see
the building. And just so our viewers know, the explanation that I think is conventional is that there was a large tank of diesel fuel stored in the lower level of that, which caught fire, and the resulting fire collapsed the building.
Well, that's basically it, but as we read in the FEMA report, it says here, and I put this in my paper, of course, the best hypothesis, which is the only one they looked at, fire, has only a low probability of occurrence. Further investigation, analyses are needed to resolve this issue, and I agree with that.
Okay.
But they admit there's only a low probability. And if you look at the collapse, you see what I've studied is the fall time, the symmetry, the fact that it first dips in the middle, that's called the kink, which is very characteristic, of course, of controlled demolition.
Professor, I am sorry that we are out of time, and I'm not sure that
one other thing I want to mention about...
Okay, if you can hit it, hit us with it quickly.
All right. Okay, here we go. Molten metal in the basements of all 3 buildings.
Right.
And yet all scientists now reasonably agree that the fires were not sufficiently hot to melt the steel. So what is this molten metal? It's a direct evidence for the use of high-temperature explosives such as thermite. Thermite produces molten iron as an end product.
Okay.
So we do have... it's a very short time, but people will read the paper, then I talk about the molten metal, the symmetry of the collapse, and the weaknesses and inadequacies of the fire hypothesis.
Professor, we're going to have to leave it to our viewers who are interested enough to follow up to do just that. We appreciate your coming on, even if I don't understand your theories. We appreciate you trying to explain them. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
We are fortunate to have with us today a courageous scholar who asks these important questions in a clear, logical, and dispassionate tone. Please join me in welcoming David Ray Griffin.
Thank you. I was just going to ask if you want to stand up for 15 seconds and have your opportunity. Well, I'm pleased to be able to say, Paul, I've actually finished the book now, so it should be out in about 6 weeks, I hope. With regard to our topic today, truth in politics, some people may wonder, people maybe outside this room, but is there anything in the 9/11 Commission report that is untrue? And now that I've finished the book, my big question is, can I find a true sentence in the book? That may sound extreme, but if you don't take it too literally, and if you realize a sentence is a part of a paragraph, which is a part of the argument, then it is hard to find. None of this is mentioned. It's not mentioned and refuted, it's just not mentioned. So that's why I call it omissions, and some people call it the 9/11 Omission Commission. Let me give another example. The World Trade Center. They hardly discuss the question of these enormous buildings coming down. They don't discuss any of the problems. One problem is, never before in history have steel-framed high-rise buildings collapsed because of fire. Now, some people say, well, it wasn't just fire, these big planes hit them. Well, people who've looked at this said that's insignificant. Besides, no plane hit building number 7, which is a 47-story skyscraper, and it came down also. Furthermore, even if you were going to have fire weaken a building, it would have to be enormous fires. They would have to be very hot, not ordinary hydrocarbon fires that you get from kerosene, which is what jet fuel is. And they would have to be very long-lasting. These fires didn't last. The South Tower came down in 57 minutes. There's an enormous amount of steel in a 110-story building that is steel-framed inside and outside. And yet they're telling us these. Now, the only thing they mention here, they mention that South Tower collapsed in 10 seconds. Can you imagine how fire would bring down a 110-story building in free fall speed? And that's what it is. Also, the wrong tower collapsed first. The North Tower was hit first. And so if it's fire that's bringing it down, it takes a while for the fire to heat up the steel. So the North Tower should have collapsed first. The South Tower also had a much smaller fire because the plane hit it at the angle, at the corner, and so most of the fuel went outside and burned up. So that enormous fireball you see, you say, boy, what an enormous fire. Well, yeah, for about 15 seconds. And it's burned up, and so there's not much fuel to keep the fire going in the South Tower. And yet it collapses within 57 minutes. One of the places where you just know they're absolutely lying and cheating is they give you an account that makes it sound plausible that these towers could have come down. They tell you that in the core of each building was a hollow shaft that was just filled with elevators and staircases. Yeah, and 47 massive steel columns. That's what the World Trade, these buildings were all about. This was this unique structure at the time. These 47 massive steel things going up into the air. So massive at the bottom. So even if you accepted the official theory, which is a pancake theory, that somehow the connectors between the columns in the middle and then the peripheral beams around the building, somehow those snapped and then the floors came down and that floor was so heavy it hit the net and it just going down. Can you imagine that happening in 10 seconds? And even if it did, just like if in the old records, when the records fell on the spindle, and those of you who are old enough to remember those, the spindle's still there. So why aren't those 47 towers still sticking up in the air? But the pictures show they totally collapse. You have something that's no more than 3 stories high. You should have had... I mean, just total dishonesty to deny the existence of those massive columns. And then they don't even mention that building number 7 collapsed. There's not a word about it. Everybody admits There is no explanation for why building number 7 collapsed. In most cities, this would have been the biggest building, 47 stories high. It can be ignored only because it was next to the towers. And FEMA says they come up with this lame explanation of how this building came down. They said the only explanation we can come up with has a very low probability of occurrence. So, there's no answer. So rather than telling you, like an honest report would, we're surprised, we're puzzled why building number 7 collapsed. There's no good answer. They just don't even mention that it collapsed. They don't tell you that Larry Silverstein, the owner virtually of the building and the builder of it, said on a PBS report, well, at a certain point, the fire chief and I got together and we said, you know, there's been so much loss of life, let's not take any chances, and we decided to pull it.
Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull.
Pull it is the slang for bringing it down by controlled demolition. So he admits it in public. It's well known. It's mentioned in any, like my book and other books and all the books that people sent to the commission assuming they wanted to know the truth. And they don't bring in Larry Silverstein and say, why did you say that? What do you mean by that? Isn't that what a commission looking for the truth might do? Likewise, Giuliani said, we knew that the towers were going to collapse, so we got the people out of building number 7. How did he know the tower? Buildings have never collapsed before in history. How could have he known the Twin Towers were going to collapse? They didn't ask him that. They treated him as a hero when he comes into the commission. They fell all over themselves, praising Rudy Giuliani as the great hero. So what I'm getting at here, those of you who haven't read it, is that all 3 collapses were pretty close to classic examples of what they call controlled demolition. When dynamite or some kind of explosives are placed throughout the building at all the crucial points, and then they put them on a computer and they bring them down in a certain order, and therefore the building comes straight down so it doesn't fall on these other buildings, and they come down in virtually free fall speed. And that's what happened here. All 3 buildings. You can see them on all sorts of places on the website. You don't see them on TV anymore. They showed them the first night, and Dan Rather, bless his soul, comes right out and blurts out the truth. He says, boy, that looks just like controlled demolition. The 9/11 Commission also does not tell you that Marvin Bush, the president's brother, and their cousin, Wirt Walker, were the principals of the company that was in charge of security for the World Trade Center. They don't, all sorts of coincidences here. They also don't tell you that there were many reports of people who worked in the building saying, we got a shutdown order, so for 3 days we couldn't go in the World Trade Center. There were engineers coming in and out. We didn't know what.
Again, his name is Scott Forbes. He joins us from across the pond today. Scott, thank you for making time for us.
You're very welcome. Hello.
Let's see, where do we start here? We don't have a lot of time, but I think what we should do first off is, just tell us maybe what the atmosphere was leading up to 9/11, exactly what your job was and what you did there in the World Trade Center towers.
Sure. I worked for, as you said, Fiduciary Trust in the South Tower. I was based on the 97th floor. where our data center was. About 3 weeks prior to 9/11, our company, along with many others in the towers, were given notice that there was going to be a power down in the top 50% of floors in the southern tower. This was unprecedented. As you can imagine, a lot of financial institutions in the building, and to have a complete loss of power meant a complete loss of systems. And for an organization like my company, it was truly extraordinary.
I mean, people probably scrambling as soon as they could to secure their systems before the power down.
Yep, that was part of the deal.
Have there been, let me, because for the sake of time, I want to keep this moving as much as possible, Scott. Had there been any power downs like this? Again, you were notified by the Port Authority there'd be a 36-hour power down at the top half of your tower. Had there been anything like this prior to this particular power down? And exactly, give us a time frame of when you were notified about the power down as related to 9/11. What was the date of the power down, and had there been one prior to this?
Okay, the power down was on the Saturday and Sunday prior to 9/11, so that would have been the 8th and 9th of September. We were given 3 weeks notice. It was relatively short time notice period to make all the preparations needed. And it was unprecedented. We'd never experienced a power down in the towers as far as I am aware. I had worked in the towers from 1998. My colleagues who had been in the building well beyond that could not remember an occasion such as this, apart from the bomb incident in the early 90s.
Well, let's move to this, Scott, because now the power has been down, and you see a number of maintenance workers coming into the building. What was in your mind suspicious or notably suspicious about some of these workers coming in to come in for the power down?
Actually, at the time, I wasn't suspicious at all. It was just part of the fact that there was a power down and that there were workers in overalls in the building.
But looking back now, you noticed that there were some suspicious behavior with these workers.
Well, of course, looking back, you question everything, and you wonder, well, one of the main reasons why I became suspicious was I got in touch with the Port Authority, and I got in touch with the 9/11 Commission to register this piece of information so that it would be acknowledged, if only to be thrown away. And I had no acknowledgement. They did not come back to me. I repeatedly called and wrote letters to them. I've had no acknowledgement. It's as if this information is of no interest to anyone, but to me it seems to be part of the puzzle and should be registered. I was not in the office on 9/11. Because of working that weekend, I had the day off on the Tuesday. And so I was in my apartment, which overlooked the Trade Center. I lived in Jersey City, across the river from the towers, so I was eyewitness to what went on there. And as soon as I saw the first tower go down, the South Tower, I was highly suspicious. It just didn't look correct. It looked like a controlled demolition. It did not look like a building collapsing either from an aircraft hitting it or from a fire inside. It seemed to crumble into dust. It just didn't ring true.
This is how it's been since day one. Oh, it's unbelievable. And this is 6 weeks later, almost 6 weeks later. And as we get closer to the center of this, it gets hotter and hotter. It's probably 1,500 degrees. We've had some small windows into what we thought was a core at some point, and it looked like an oven. You know, it was just roaring inside. And it was just a bright reddish orange color. See that stuff he's pulling out? What was that, Chief? We're gonna hold off on the water. See the stuff he's pulling out? Yeah. It's red hot. If we hit it too much steam, you won't be able to see what he's doing. Great.
This is thermite. It's a powdered mixture of iron oxide and aluminium, which when ignited burns at 2,500 degrees Celsius, which is very, very hot. This is liquid nitrogen. It's specially stored at minus 198 degrees Celsius. That's 163 degrees colder than the North Pole in winter. But is it cold enough to neutralize the intense heat of thermite? Packed into the slow-release mechanism of a garden flower pot, the thermite is ready for action. Just light the touch paper and stand well back. The fuse triggers the irreversible thermite reaction. As scorching hot meets freezing cold, a fierce battle rages. The smoke clears, and incredibly, nothing remains. As the thermite burns at 2,500 degrees, it releases a raging torrent of molten iron, which rains down upon the liquid nitrogen, boiling the glacial mixture away in a plume of vapor and melting the cylinder, leaving just a puddle of white-hot iron. A clear victory for thermite. So there you go, Dan. Adding something cold to thermite doesn't cancel it out. It just makes it angry. Thermite. You won't like it when it's angry. This is a car. It's been specially chosen to be destroyed because it's old, it's white, but more importantly, because it's French. The engine block is the densest part of a car. It's basically a huge lump of metal, and, well, it's very hard to melt. Lucky then, the Brainiacs have plenty of thermite, specially packed into the slow-release mechanism of a garden flower pot. A big pile on the bonnet directly over the engine block should do the trick. Time to light the fuse and give this homage to French engineering the send-off it so richly deserves. The irreversible thermite reaction begins. Within seconds, the fiery concoction eats through the bonnet, spraying molten thermite into the engine beneath. The devastation continues inside until finally a torrent of white-hot liquid metal pours out of the bottom, signaling the inevitable victory for thermite. A quick check confirms a clear path of destruction through the engine. Now that the engine is melted clean through, it seems only fitting to have a go at the petrol tank. Packed into the slow-release mechanism of a garden flower pot, the thermite is ready for action. Popped onto the roof, directly above the fuel tank, quick top-up, and just 4 feet of family car stands between the thermite and 8 gallons of petrol. Light the touch paper and stand well back. The irreversible thermite reaction begins. Thermite produces a stream of molten iron which melts through the car in seconds. Its 2,500 degree heat igniting the expanding petrol in a devastating fireball, leaving behind a car that won't be going very far anytime soon.
I'm sure they clear the area, but I think it's falling. He's going to bring in the big one. Wow, this is zooming out.
Let me just tell you about that. Someone asked about the physics. So this is the latest, and what we've seen now. There's several videos of molten metal pouring out of the south tower just before its collapse. In other words, within about 3 or 4 minutes of its collapse, particularly starting about 2 minutes before it collapsed, and right at the point, as you look at the video, where there's twisting and failure, right there is where this molten metal comes out. Now the molten metal is yellow-white in color. And furthermore, just before you see this metal pouring out, there's a white, it's called a fire in the National Lab, the NIST report. But it's, anyway, it looks kind of like a fire, but they say it must be a metal fire. Could be some kind of very intense chemical reaction to be white hot like that, with white, they call it smoke, but it's a dust that comes out of this. So the question is, what is this? Somebody called in and said, well, it's just the steel melted. Well, there's several arguments which I'll raise tomorrow, but the main one against that, of course, the National Lab scientists have looked at that. The fires did not get anywhere hot enough to melt the structural steel. That's number one. Number two, the NIST commissioned Underwriter Labs to do actual tests on models. These are floor assemblies for the tower, and actually model them and then subject these to very severe fire endurance tests. Well, the steel did not melt in any of those tests. And in fact, and this also is in the report, the floor assemblies, the models, they couldn't even get them to collapse. And so those experiments have been done. There was no melting. So what is this yellow hot metal coming out? Well, in the NIST report they say, and it's said as a speculation, this perhaps is the airplanes, or the airplane not too far away, it was maybe 100 feet away, that melted, and the molten aluminum made it over, the floor gave way, and the molten aluminum came out. So back to the aluminum that these guys are surmising is coming out of this building. The trouble is we did experiments with Wes, it doesn't turn. The pot is red hot now as he's pouring it out. The aluminum's still silvery. Right. So I said, well, heat the pot up, use oxyacetylene torch. To yellow white hot, the pot, and inside the aluminum was still gray, silvery gray. That's right. Have you worked with molten aluminum?
I've worked at Geneva. I know all about melting metals and what temperatures they go at. I'm a welder.
This is great.
I'm also a
I'd like
contractor.
to have you look at this paper as we work on a little more. But anyway, so then I said, well, Wes, let's try this. Put your torch right on the aluminum. Let's heat this right up, So for about 40 seconds, that's a little scary. But it didn't, you don't know what it's going to do. Gas on aluminum. Yeah, you'd have aluminum oxide peel off in layers as he's doing that. But the aluminum throughout this process stayed silvery gray and never looked yellow hot. And I said, well, if you did that to steel, yes, it would be yellow hot easily within this time with this treatment. But the aluminum continued silvery gray. So the point is, it's not aluminum coming off of there. And another point is, if aluminum melts about 600 centigrade, which is red hot, but it would still look silvery. But the aluminum is not going to wait there while you heat it to yellow hot temperature. It's a plane. If there's heat source, it would flow. As soon as it melts, it flows. It's not like it's in a pot where you're. And even if it wasn't a pot, it wouldn't look yellow and gray.
It's like mercury. When it gets up, it's just like mercury.
Yeah, it looks just really quite like, that's a good point. Mercury, you've seen that silvery. So we ruled that out. And we did some other experiments, too, with the molten aluminum while we're at it. But so what is it then? It's not molten steel. It's not molten aluminum. Well, it turns out that it fits this white reaction, the smoke, this white dust coming off, and then followed by this yellow-white metal dripping out of it. It fits just what we see with a fairly well-known chemical reaction. Anybody want to hazard a guess? Or thermate. Thermate has sulfur added. And if you look at it's fairly well known, thermite reacts aluminum powder, which is necessary to have that reaction proceed at any decent rate. And it takes a high temperature to get started. Once it gets started, it just goes. Thermite is 2,500 centigrade, white hot. And off comes this aluminum oxide dust, and the reaction's white hot, and then out of that flows this steel. Well, it's iron. It's molten iron is the end product. So basically, the aluminum is pulling the oxygen away from the iron oxide, and you get molten iron and aluminum oxide dust. It just fits perfectly.
My daughter worked in Tower 2 in the World Trade Center. She wasn't lucky enough to be ushered out of the building by Willie Rodriguez. She was unfortunate enough to work in Tower 2, where 5 minutes after the first plane hit Tower 1, she was on the phone to the Park Avenue office telling everyone she was told she was safe. When she was on the phone to the Park Avenue office, best I can figure that was roughly the time when George W. Bush was ushered into a school to read a book to children. This is my daughter, Vanessa Langer, and when he took his goddamn war, he took her name, and I'm damn taking it back.
Yes.
Running mate of President Richard Cheney doesn't get her name anymore. She's mine, and she doesn't look like this anymore. Yesterday, I finally had the courage to go to the medical examiner's office, where the picture of her that was taken on September 24th was available for looking at in her file. Do you know what a death mask looks like? Do you know what a scream looks like? That was my baby, and she wasn't safe. And no one in this country investigated that. No one investigated that. Do you understand that George W. Bush, when he declared the other day that he's going to investigate what happened to the victims in New Orleans, was the same person who investigated what happened to my daughter? No, he couldn't even articulate the word investigate. Do you hear that? There aren't enough people here. So everyone you see, you tell them 3,000 minus 1, because I'm reclaiming her name. And I'm telling anyone who knows anyone who died that day, you reclaim that name. You went to Iraq for 9/11. Why? Is one Arab the same as all Arabs? How dare that work in America? Look at your hands right now. Do you see blood on them? Because you're not looking at the right picture. How many people did you see drown in New Orleans? Where were the goddamn buses? Where was NORAD? Why wasn't anyone evacuated? Let me tell you something. Dick Cheney needed 9/11 to happen. George W. Bush doesn't even fucking know that. Dan Quayle wouldn't have known that if he got to be president when Dick Cheney was Secretary of Defense. So you tell me, where are the academics? Where are the experts? Where are the Democrats? Where are the decent human beings who are conservative Republicans? Because I want to see some men in suits here. Because this is my baby. She doesn't look like this anymore.
What's your feeling about the 9/11 Commission report?
I feel it was something that was done to pacify the families because we were crying out for this to happen. I feel it didn't delve deep enough, and we want the truth, but the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and I feel that did not come out at that time.
And your feeling?
I feel the same way. I feel that, they doctored a lot of the stuff. They didn't let us know really and truly what they found out. They just doctored it up for the government, of course. Nothing for us. Nothing was done for us.
So I'd be accurate in saying you both would like to see another 9/11 Commission report reopened?
Yes.
Absolutely.
What's your names?
Eileen Torres. Carmen Sayas.
Marisol Torres.
I said that I don't have it and no one has seen it. And isn't that strange that no one has seen we've seen the planes go into the Twin Towers in New York, 1,000 times over. We've never seen the plane hit the Pentagon. And what I said was, having filmed before at the Pentagon and noticing how the roof of the Pentagon and the parking lot and the grounds of the Pentagon, there must be 100 video cameras surrounding the Pentagon, at least, if not more.
Yeah.
And so there's footage of that plane hitting the building from numerous angles, and yet we've never seen the footage. Why is that? That's been my question now for 3.5 years. Why is that? I think it's a legitimate question to ask. In asking the question, I'm not suggesting that there wasn't a plane that hit the Pentagon. I'm just saying there's a reason why the United States government does not want the world to see the plane hitting the Pentagon, and I'd like to know why that is.
You are the shock troops battling to preserve our cherished freedoms. You know, our freedoms are not under attack from the remnants of Saddam Hussein's Ba'athist Party. They're under attack by the likes of John Ashcroft. They're trampled by Donald Rumsfeld. They're disdained by Dick Cheney. And they're not even understood by George W. Bush. The battle to preserve our freedoms is not taking place in Baghdad and Tikrit and Fallujah. It's taking place in peace marches and demonstrations in Ghirardelli Park in San Francisco, in Memorial Park in Oklahoma City, and in Lafayette Park in Washington, D.C. The front lines are right here. You are preserving our cherished freedoms by exercising them in spite of ridicule and opposition. The battle to preserve our freedoms is you. You are the foot soldiers protecting our civil rights. You're the Minutemen sounding the alarm against tyranny. You are upholding the spirit of the American Revolution. You are preserving the freedoms that the troops in the desert have a right to come back to. The troops getting shot at in Iraq are not protecting us. We are protecting them and their honor and their freedoms. We, my sisters and brothers, are protecting this nation by speaking truth to power. We're speaking truth to a pack of liars. We must do it loudly and fearlessly and courageously and joyfully, for we are the patriots. And when we speak, this is the truth that we proclaim. This war in Iraq has nothing to do with national security or freedom or democracy or human rights or protecting our allies or weapons of mass destruction or defeating terrorism or disarming Iraq. It has to do with money, it has to do with oil, and it has to do with raw imperial power. And it's based totally on lies. Those who forced this war on an unwilling world are guilty of violating the U.S. Constitution, the UN Charter, the Nuremberg Principles, and international law. What they have done is illegal, immoral, unconstitutional, and treason. Before this war started, we knew it would fracture NATO, split the United Nations, separate us from our allies, and destroy the great nation we inherited from our fathers who died in World War II. And it has. We knew it would make our beloved country feared and hated, an outcast from the world community, a pariah among the peoples, and the #1 rogue nation on earth. And it has. This is nothing but treason. We knew this sadistic corporate war would incense the Arab world, provide thousands of new Osama bin Ladens, and enormously increase the terrorist threat. And it has. We knew it would further endanger the American people and the British people and destroy our national security. And it has. This cabal of neoconservatives from PNAC who planned this war, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, Libby, Pearl, Jeb Bush, even before W became president, they told us why they had to do it. They said, we need to occupy Iraq permanently in order to dominate Iran, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and the southern Russian republics around the Caspian Sea. We need to control the entire Middle East and all its oil. And as other speakers have said, they knew the American people wouldn't stand for it, and they said so in their documents. And they said, unless there's that new Pearl Harbor. Well, 9/11 did supply that, and we've been lied to not only about the war, but about 9/11 itself. They ignored the warnings. More than that, we have mounting evidence that at least they made it impossible for those planes to be intercepted. If our government had merely did nothing, and I say that as an old interceptor pilot, I know the drill, I know what it takes, I know how long it takes, I know what the procedures are, I know what they were, and I know what they've changed them to. If our government had merely done nothing and allowed normal procedures to happen on that morning of 9/11, the Twin Towers would still be standing and thousands of dead Americans would still be alive. My sisters and brothers, that is treason. As a combat veteran, I will not stand idly by and watch our security destroyed by a president who went AWOL rather than serve in Vietnam. As one who's devoted his life to the security of this country, I will not stand by and watch an appointed president send our sons and daughters around the world to kill Arabs for the oil companies. Patriotism demands that I speak out and call it by its name. It is treason. I joined the Air Force a long time ago to protect our borders and our people, not the financial interests of Folgers, Chiquita Banana, Exxon, and Halliburton. We've had enough corporate wars. No more Iraqs, no more Kosovos, no more El Salvadors, no more Colombias. These are not isolated incidents of stupidity. They're part of a long, bloody history of foreign policy being conducted for the financial interests of the wealthy few. It is a new form of colonialism, all the benefits and none of the responsibilities. It violates our Constitution, it endangers our people, and it is treason. As a pilot who flew 101 combat missions in Vietnam, I swore to uphold the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that includes a renegade president. It's time for George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Condoleezza Rice, and the whole oil mafia to be removed from office and indicted for treason. We owe it to the men and women serving in Iraq to end the occupation, restore our credibility and honor, and bring them home. And it could be done. If we had a president who would go to the UN and say, we made a horrible mistake, it was wrong, and we make you 3 commitments. 1, we give up all rights to Iraqi oil. 2, we give up all rights to the rebuilding contracts. If Halliburton wants a contract from you, they have to bid on it like everybody else. And they have to hire Iraqis to do the work for a change. Number 3, we give up all rights to those 14 permanent military bases we're building in Iraq at this time. Now, the people in the White House are not going to make those commitments, so they have to go, and all the puppeteers with them. You know, we are the people and we are sovereign. We are the patriots, and the whole world is with us. Everywhere in the country that they have a free press, all over the world, people know the facts, and they are with us, not the people out there, not the deadheads, not the know-nothings, not the chicken hawks. They're with us. Don't let anybody intimidate you into silence. It's time for all of us to speak truth to power. Our sons and daughters are being killed. They're being maimed by the tens of thousands. They're being poisoned by depleted uranium by the hundreds of thousands. Their children are being born with birth defects, horrible birth defects at an alarming rate. We're being lied to about all of that as well. Our sons and daughters in uniform are being dehumanized, emotionally damaged, psychologically destroyed. They're being made not just to kill, but to hate. Those who return are prone to domestic violence, divorce, and suicide. The lies, the killing, and the destruction of our young sons and daughters must not continue. We must end it. Patriotism demands that we speak truth to power and that we support what's left of our troops by bringing them home now. Together we can do it. We can get the truth out there to the American people. We're on the verge. We've got half the people with us. We've got to go after the other half. And together we can take back our country and get the liars the heck out of there. God bless America, and God grant us regime change in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much.
I will be discussing today is one of the most controversial issues confronting our nation. I'm using as a subject from which to preach why I am opposed to the war in Vietnam. Now let me make it clear in the beginning that I see this war as an unjust, evil, and futile war. I preach to you today on the war in Vietnam because my conscience leaves me with no other choice The time has come for America to hear the truth about this tragic war. In international conflicts, the truth is hard to come by because most nations are deceived about themselves. Rationalizations and the incessant search for scapegoats are the psychological cataracts that blind us to our sins. But the day has passed for superficial patriotism. He who lives with untruth lives in spiritual slavery. Freedom is still the bonus we receive for knowing the truth. Ye shall know the truth, says Jesus, and the truth shall set you free. I've chosen to preach about the war in Vietnam today because I agree with Dante that the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who in a period of moral crisis maintain their neutrality. There comes a time when silence is betrayal. The truth of these words is beyond doubt. Silence is betrayal.